Hey everyone, so this is interim assessment number 4 week. So this is a big week. There's a lot of stuff coming out this week. You're going to be getting a lot of resources, a full review. I believe it's tomorrow. So we do have PD. I'm going to send out an email about that, but which means that it won't be live, but I'll have a recorded review for you guys that will give you a great review on all of this stuff I'm about to talk about. But I did want to just give you kind of a stumbling walkthrough of what's going to be on the interim assessment. All right, so if you hear any keywords that I say in the next 5 minutes, they're probably going to be on the test. So just make sure that if everything I say makes sense, then you're gonna do just fine. All right, so let's start out. Let's start out with probably the hardest one, and that's just parallax perspective. Sorry. Perspectives. All right, so make sure that you know what that means. Why what is parallax perspective? How does it make us view objects differently? So we talked about this, and some of this stuff is from last semester. So remember, if you're one of my new people and some of this doesn't make sense, reach out to me, make sure, or set up a one-on-one session with me, and I'll make sure that you get the material you need to study. Remember the difference between virtual space and the play area. So what is the difference between the play area, kind of what we're seeing on our screen, versus kind of what's way back there? How is that coded differently? How is it? How do we set that up? What variables do we need to change? What values do we need to change in order to make virtual space move to the left, to the right, up, down, forward, back? So just kind of giving you some hints there. We went over a lot of new genres of games this semester so far. We've added a bunch to our really long list. All right, so we added shooters, all right, and we added side scrollers, I believe, and then we also added platformers. Now, 2 of these are very similar. It's hard to type and talk at the same time, and I'm messing this up. But like I said, this is unrehearsed, and it's going to be kind of a rumbling little review here. So platformers and side scrollers are pretty close, but they do have some key differences, especially side scrollers. So if you don't know what that is, maybe look it up, or go play some side scrollers and play some platformers and see what the difference between those two are, and then know the key attributes to why these games, like what makes these games what they are. All right, so why do we call something a shooter? Why do we call it a platformer? So remember, you know, use all your recordings, but if it doesn't make sense and you just can't find it in the OHS, just reach out to me and I'll help you out. How do 2D games get the effects that they do? How in the world do you get a 2D game that's on your monitor, which is flat? How do you get it to look like it has depth? All right, so what things allow us to give our games depth? And that's probably the biggest hint I'm going to give you. What are those things called? Also, remember conditions. So we've talked about conditions so much this year, and you guys have set up hundreds of conditions already. So what are the 2 things that are making up those events? All right, so we've set up 1,000 conditions, and then those have triggered 1,000 actions. All right, so those 2 things, how do those 3 work together? What in the world do conditions, actions, and events have to do with each other? All right, so know the relationships between those 3. Know your basic objects from last semester and beginning of this semester. So we've added a few objects. We've added score objects, which are kind of a good way to kind of track your progress through a game as a score object. We've had some new objects, but do remember your basics too, like your health bars and your life objects. How are those different? Remember, there was just a very small difference in the reason between or in life bars versus or lives. Let's see. I'm gonna word this properly. I don't want to confuse you. Lives versus the health bar. Why was that different? There was a very key difference between those 2. And then some of this stuff, if you don't know, you can also log into ClickTeam and then just try to make it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You'll see what makes these different. So the biggest category that you could probably study is going to be your movement types. Your movement types are always going to be on every single IA exam, but on this IA exam in particular, I think there's at least 5 questions, if not 6 questions, that are just based on movement types. So that's a big deal. So make sure you know all the different movement types. Log into ClickTeam, create an object, and just test the movement and see what they look like, and that'll help you out a lot. Remember the difference between a bonus and a challenge. So what is adding a bonus to your game? And we call it a bonus in the gaming industry. It's not just a term I'm throwing out there. what's the difference between a bonus and then adding challenges to your games? So think about different ways that you can, as a game designer, add those two components. Bonuses kind of help your player. Challenges, definitely make it harder but more enjoyable for your player as well. So think about that a lot. Also think about, and then just design-wise, we talked about gradients. We talked about particle systems a lot. So those are the two big ones. And then know how to use those properly. Now, I know it's kind of an opinion. It's objective whether or not those are used properly, but there are some really bad examples out there. So make sure you know the difference between a bad example of a gradient or a particle system and a good example of those two. And then the next, probably the last biggest thing that I can throw out there for you is remember the different names for what you're seeing on the screen. All right, so we talked about play area, and we talked about kind of virtual width and virtual height and all those different virtual things, but there's also the difference between a hood. Do you remember we talked about a HUD, a hood, heads-up display? And if you want to watch the movie Iron Man, that'll probably give you a good representation of what an HUD is. So make sure you know the difference between the HUD, which is maybe what a gamer's seeing, and then whenever they kind of log out of the game, maybe they're seeing something called a menu. All right, so get familiar with common menu items and what would we as a game designer put on a menu that wouldn't confuse our players and may even help our players kind of navigate through the game. And then, okay, the very last thing I'll tell you is the evolution of gaming. That's something that you should be studying throughout this whole course. How are these games evolving? How are we going from, or how did we get from that pixelated black and white mess that was on the Game Boy to what we have now with 3D graphics? So how has it changed? What has the gaming industry brought from kind of like their roots to now? What has changed? What's gotten better? What's gotten worse? So things like sound have obviously gotten much better. Graphics have gotten much better. But things like storage, space has gotten worse, obviously. It takes a lot of space. And then power usage has gotten worse, believe it or not. We're not very efficient with power usage. So just make sure that you know those things. If you know everything I just talked about, you can cover all of those little vocabulary words that I just sent out. You're going to do great. If not, let's wait till tomorrow. I'll send out the review tomorrow. So good luck, everybody. I hope that this helps. If it doesn't, reach out to me. We'll get a one-on-one session set up. But I can't wait to see you all in class on Thursday. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye, guys.